Today I have a conversation with Pelle Tornell. How do you pronounce it in Swedish?
Pelle Tornell.
Yeah, Pelle Tornell. Welcome, Pelle.
Thank you.
And the reason, first of all, I found you through our mutual connection, Peter Van Os.
Yeah.
He talks highly about you. He works with you in Sweden on scale-up projects and education. And I know him very well too, so that's our connection. But also, he talked about your paper, your research on decision making.
Yeah.
So, and that's an interesting topic for me.
Yes.
That's why I thought, okay, I need to talk to Pelle to understand what he learned and what's going on. So before we jump into your paper and the things that you discovered, let's go a bit back into who you are and what you do. For me, when I read your LinkedIn profile, you sound like a serial entrepreneur.
Yeah, you could say that. I've done a few entrepreneurial ventures, and I've been involved in growth companies, starting and growing companies for my whole career, basically. I came into, my first job was with an investment company that had a very dynamic owner at the time that turned it into a greenhouse for new businesses in Sweden. It was really a very influential entrepreneur in the Swedish corporate life in the 80s and 90s, and really transformed the media and telecom industry here in the Nordics first, and then in many other countries also, but mostly known here in Sweden and the Nordics. So that was the start, and since then I've been fascinated with the power and fun of building companies, having teams that realize ambitious ideas and change, making change. I think that's really fascinating process. An idea in the mind of a person or a few persons becomes something very concrete in the world.
What was the most important thing that you learned from this entrepreneur that sparked your work?
I think it was exactly that so much is possible if you're willing to follow a strong idea, a strong passion, and start taking action. That really to be open for possibility, and much greater things can happen than you ever thought it was possible. I think that he really lived that, and that was very inspiring.
You've had or were CEO of a number of companies. Did you sell them all? How did every company end for you?
It was different. It has been different. It's one company we took public. It was an IPO. A couple of other companies have been sold. Then I have been also I've been a CEO where I've not been an owner, and there I've just left the company, or it actually has, or I've been a very small owner and it was sold also. So it's been a mixture of exits. Sometimes when things get when that original spirit is somehow lost in the cement of a corporation, or the mud that gets ideas stick and not fly, then I get a bit bored and want to move on. So that's basically why I myself get a bit bored when that original inspiration and creativity is not there anymore.
this opens up a number of questions again. What do you think can you do to keep that creativity, that inspiration?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question that I've been thinking a lot about, because I think the spirit needs to be, it's like a flame on a candle. It needs to be seen by everyone, not just in one person or a few people's mind. Like maybe I made the mistake of assuming that everybody was as inspired or saw the idea as clearly as I did. But if you don't see it, you might start questioning: is there really a flame? Is this really? And that. So I think you need to keep it alive. You need to make it transparent. You need to get others involved. More people carry the initial inspiration and the possibilities that it becomes part of the culture more than just single idea in one or a few people's minds. But it's very difficult, but it's very interesting. I think the companies that succeed in doing that has an enormous power, force for doing great things. But it's abstract, and that makes it difficult.
Yeah, and what did you do to, because you've done a number of these sessions with, you have a number of experiences with various companies that you started. I can imagine that every time when you start a new company, you want to get that energy again, but also you want to keep it as long as possible. So what have you changed in those years when you started a new company every time?
I've been trying to be more aware of this that need to communicate more, better, listen more, so that everyone feels included, and also takes ownership of the idea, that it's not my idea that should be developed. It's more an idea that several people contribute to and owns together. And I think so that's part of it. It's letting go of the development of the idea, but still keeping the spirit of the idea development, so to speak. So I think that's been the key. But talking more about it, listening more to others, and letting it develop more organically than with a preset plan of what this should be.
Yeah, I think that last one is interesting. Develop it more organically. Do you feel that the size of the company, so the number of employees that you have, is of importance there?
Oh yes, very much. I think there are stages you go through where this is challenged more, and that's when you it's, I mean, rule of thumb, it's when you're around 10 people, when you're around 30 people, and when you're maybe 100 people, but that's not to be taken as an exact science. But it's this, I would look at social psychology of how groups transform when you add more people. You have those numbers that it's much tougher to communicate if you're over 10. It's tougher if you're over 30 when you don't know people, and those kind of aspects play in and challenges this entrepreneurial spirit or creative spirit or inspiration. I think because because you also need to get more structured, more professional as you grow, because everybody needs to know more specifically what are the expectations of me in this next new phase. In an early phase with a few people, you can kind of take it as it comes, and everybody knows pretty much if you're running into somebody else's turf and you're cooperating in an organic way. But then you need more structure on some aspects, and that's where the tricky part comes in. How do you keep it flowing, but at the same time get the structure in place so that flow is not hampered in any way.
Do you see, okay, first another question to make sure that I understand it right. Today, you do a number of things, but you have a company that's surrounded on ScaleUp Academy, but also you have like speaking and writing and your mind business, which is more like a solitary business.
No, right now actually I primarily run an academy for leadership teams in growth companies from the size of 2 million euros to 25 million euros. That's typical the size of companies. And I do that in cooperation with the largest financial newspaper here in Sweden.
Hold on. I'm not sure what's going on, but the sound is really getting worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. See that now you're back.
I hear that. Is that?
It could be the connection. It could be also just Zoom, right? Sometimes Zoom just does it. That's okay. So just start again with what you do today.
Okay. Well, I run an academy full time today, where I meet with leadership teams of growth companies during 1 year, called the ScaleUp Academy. So growth companies from the size of 2 million euros to around 25 million euros. And I do that in cooperation with the largest financial newspaper in Sweden called Dagens Industri. So that's we have about 50 companies presently that we work with. So it's we're a team of 4 coaches and about 4 or 5 other people in sales, marketing, administration. So that's what I'm doing presently. So not so much. I used to do public speaking on decision making and entrepreneurship, and I also wrote a book on decision making and did research, as you mentioned, on decision making in growth companies. But right now it's the focus on how can we help more ambitious and important companies to succeed in their growth and become sustainably successful. So that's the task right now.
And you do that now with a small team. It's less than 10 people.
Yes.
Is that on purpose, or do you also want to grow that beyond that?
Yes, we want to grow that, but we also want to grow with high interaction with the management teams and so it's quite personal. It's not really. That's why it takes a little longer to scale. I think the demand is there, but we need personally. It's not an online education, even though we do some digital right now. But that's why we can't really scale fast without becoming more coaches, and then it's a matter of keeping the quality and the level of interaction to really make the content better and better also.
Right. Do you see yourself as a successful entrepreneur?
Good question, and difficult question, because how do you define success?
Right, that was going to be my next question.
No, I don't think I don't really see myself as a successful entrepreneur. Because I have not built anything that I'm not working in something that I've built for like 20 or 30 years. That is a large corporation that has a clear position in the market. So it's a difficult question. I don't know. I guess I might be too self-critical also. I also see a successful entrepreneur also has a life that is doing, first of all, has a lot of freedom to develop him or herself, is doing something sustainably good. So I put the bar quite high, and I don't think I meet it myself. I would have said yes 20 years ago, after I'd taken the company at the time public and was financially very well off. But that was also one-dimensional view on success, and now I see it slightly differently, because it's success is to me it's much more multi-dimensional today. I cannot say that I'm successful if I'm not feeling satisfied inside, and I wasn't at the time. I was feeling satisfied from an external perspective. When I looked at myself from the external, I thought, yes, this was successful in a fairly short amount of time, build a fairly large company and very valuable, but I didn't feel successful inside, so I couldn't really, with authenticity towards myself, say that this was 100% success.
Do you see that age gives a different perspective on success?
Yeah, I think so. I think it does. Maturity and experiences, but I also believe that it's what you make it. It's just the word success. I think today it's more important, how do I feel? Am I feeling inspired? Do I have the freedom to explore and what I am interested in and what I feel the energy is taking me? Those things are more success today than looking at the bank account or looking at the CV. That's really not, that's only a very small part of the success today.
Was your time when you did the research, which was around 2014, 2016,
Yeah.
was that also a period where you looked for self-development as filling in a part of that success?
Yeah, I think it was a search for doing meaningful stuff and also developing knowledge that I was really interested in myself. And the topic of decision making really was really interesting, both from a professional side, but also on a personal side, and seeing that decisions really, they need to be both professionally and personally right to be fulfilling. And I think that, so it was kind of a personal development journey, but it was also a professional development, understanding entrepreneurship better from the perspective of decision making. As an entrepreneur, you have to make a lot of decisions, and I think applying the the science of decision making to entrepreneurship is very interesting and potentially would be very valuable to a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs or even seasoned entrepreneurs, that to make less mistakes, but also to build a company where you feel very good inside also. So that combination. So I took it quite rigorously from neuroscience to computer science to economics and psychology, and looked at decision making from every angle.
Why did you pick expert entrepreneurs as the focus for this research?
Well, it's entrepreneurship is difficult to research, as it's a broad subject, and in academia you need to have a clear research question and try to limit other factors, so you're researching one specific detail or one idea, not and try to isolate what is influencing this. And I found that to be very difficult when it comes to entrepreneurship, that some of the research that I looked on, it was too detailed to really take into account all the other things that are playing a part. So I found the academic entrepreneurial research, a lot of it was very difficult to apply in the practical, in the real, in practice. So I looked upon it as a quite experienced entrepreneur myself, and thought, would this be helpful would I become a better entrepreneur? But that question was seldom asked in the academic circles that I spent time with. So that's why I took a different approach, which had been done, for example, by one of the leading entrepreneurial researchers and professors, Saraswati, who looked at expert entrepreneurs and tried to see how do they make decisions, and what can we learn from the way they approach decision making. So looking at the people so that's a different way of doing it, that I was attracted to, because it also made me curious. What do entrepreneurs that have really been successful in the definition as used by Saraswati first, and then I used it also, an expert entrepreneur has several ventures, at least 10 years of entrepreneurship, being an owner, founder, manager, and then has taken at least one company public or made an exit that would have been the equivalent of taking it public, had the opportunity. So that's quite a high bar, so I thought that was interesting and it hadn't been done to really deeply interview these entrepreneurs and find are there any commonalities in how they approach decision making. Can we from that deduce a process or a number of principles that seems to be working for them at least? So it's a starting point. This was a pilot study, you could say, a starting point for where can we go deeper, and it hadn't been done in that way in research before.
What were the most important commodities?
Well, I found 5 principles that was more commonly occurring than others in these. I interviewed 16 expert entrepreneurs that came, either they had won the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year and qualified for with these criteria that I named before, or I had scanned through the financial press and found these and contacted them. So I got to interview 16 and asked them about their decision processes, difficulties in decision making, decisions that had turned out very good, decisions that had turned out very bad, successful ventures, non-success or failed ventures. What were the and from there deducted these 5 principles. The first one was that purpose guides decisions. Let purpose guide decision. That was strong, not in all of them, but if it wasn't purpose, it was a clear position in the market. So that was, some of them came more from this is the purpose, this is why, the question why, and others in their mind were looking more to a clear position in the market that's basically where the puck is going, or that's a space where I can see this industry or this market developing to that space, and I see the clear position that someone can take, and I see how I or we can do that. So it was either that clear position or a very strong why this is important that we do. So those were the 2. That was number 1, that they had a clear purpose or clear position that guided their decision, that they came back to and said, is this decision we're making, is it taking us closer to that position, or is it in alignment with the purpose? And I think that made, as they explained it, decision making easier, was something to fall back on. And they also spent a lot of time in communicating this to the rest of the company. So that was number 1, that and that I think comes back to your question about success.
Yeah.
A clear definition of where you want to go or why. I think that connects to, if you're successful, and that drives your decision making in that direction.
Do you see that from looking back at your decisions for starting a company or selling it or making important decisions in these companies? Is that also vision or the why was important to your decisions?
Yes, it was, but in varying degrees in different companies. But where the purpose was clear, as one of the companies I started was an educational software company. There, the purpose was very strong among us two founders, and that was something that we came back to regularly. Anytime we took a big decision, it was, how does this reflect on our purpose? In that case, it was also a clear strategic position that we saw that market developing, and we saw how things would, the educational market would change. I would say that was a combination. But when that became, as the company grew with more success, actually financial success, and I think we at least I lost the closeness to the purpose a bit and became somewhat more attached to the financial outcome of the company and the success, and this is the company that made the IPO, that we became, the target became the IPO instead of the purpose and the clear position in the market. And I think that changed things a lot. We succeeded with the IPO, but I think we could have built a better company, staying closer with the purpose and the strategic position that in the earlier days was much more prominent.
Can you imagine that having your vision very bright and clear in front of you, that this could have been a long-term company, a long-term building of the company?
Yes, I think so. Yes.
Yeah, I can imagine that would make it more fulfilling.
Yeah.
So, to just dive a little bit deeper in this one, because I find it a very logical driver for decisions for entrepreneurs, right? So what can you do? And you gave some hints, but can you make it maybe even more clear? What can you do to hang on, to keep that vision very clear, instead of just focusing at some point onto financial targets and numbers becoming leading over the vision?
Yeah, I think you need to be aware of the fact that it is something that you really need to work on, even if you feel it very strongly and it's obvious in the beginning maybe, then there are a lot of forces normally that drags you in different directions. So you need to just be aware of that this is something powerful we have here, and I think you need to state it clearly. You have to repeat it regularly. You have to come back to it and nurture it, so to speak, as a management team and for yourself. Just are we in connection with our purpose that we set? What is it to me right now? What is it to you? What is it to the others? And that's a discussion that very few companies actually take. In the companies I see, that at best it's it's in their mind, and they can talk about it if you ask them questions, but having it alive in the sense that it's something you're reflecting on, you're talking about it, you are mirroring decisions in relation to it. That's quite rare, but if you do that, I think you keep it alive by bringing it up in conversation, setting time without a clear target, just to give it space, you could say, and discuss where are we in relation to it. Because you also change, is my experience as a person. Maybe this was very important to you when you were 30, because of things going on in your personal life or your vision of where you were going. And then when you look in 5 years later, you have children, you have maybe a house, maybe a financial situation, then perhaps things have changed, and it's not so obvious, even if you kind of in your mind think that that's as important as when I started, but is it really? Because you are also a different person. So I think that's why you need to really don't take it for granted that it's always going to be as strong, and it should probably develop also. You get a more mature relationship to your purpose, you could say, and I think we spend way too little time on this, and then it's like a relationship. Suddenly you realize I'm not in love with this person, or I'm not, because we haven't really talked about since the phase of falling in love, and how it's a bit similar to that. You need to nurture it and see how it develops, and also it connects to that original spirit that got you started and made you take all these risks and put in all this time to develop this company.
I can imagine it's part of the lessons you teach at the academy.
Yeah.
Is there a rhythm? How often you talk about this?
Well, we try to bring it up once a quarter, but some of the companies make it part of their I would say weekly meeting, monthly meeting, that they repeat it, or they keep talking about it. We do not follow the companies that intimately, that it's kind of up to the entrepreneurs, but we once a quarter we check in on the aspects that we believe are very important to keep alive and make sure that you have not slipped on, and that's purpose is an important part that comes up too. But more as a reminder, the actual work needs to be done in the company continuously.
Right. This is more a personal question, or maybe hopefully a confirmation. Do you see that a coach could be a good way to keep up with the vision, to make it
absolutely
stick?
I think a coach can be very valuable for this, as a reminder and challenging the person to really keep alive. Are you true to this purpose? What is this purpose to do now? I think it's better doing it in dialogue than just thinking in your own mind. So I think a coach can be very valuable here.
Yeah, and also I looked through your paper, of course. I read the paper, and what I read also is that you have a conversation with those entrepreneurs afterwards, right? So the thing is, of course, that we have a bias how we remember things,
Yeah.
So we remember the highlights and remember the beginning and the end, but we also forget a lot of information that was important at the time and influenced how we behaved, but we don't remember that part. It's not on purpose, but that's just how it goes. That's how our brain works. We can't remember every facet of the film.
Right.
So I can imagine that um, looking backwards, you, as an entrepreneur, you would paint a better picture of how you made decisions
Yeah.
as it really happens. I will propose something to you and see how you think about this. What I've talked about a couple of times, and I think is really important if you want to make better decisions, if you're an entrepreneur or not, but I focus also on entrepreneurship, is that you make a decision book. So at the moment when you are working at the decision, the long-term decisions, right, the ones that need more of your brain power, then you write down what's going on. I have a couple of questions that I ask for you on paper and that you can fill out. So Peter has also helped me with that, is so that you have like a process to do the decision in a certain kind of way, but most importantly, that you write down what's going on at the moment when you make the decision. For example, how you feel, what is your gut saying to you, right? So people say that, a lot of people say we make gut decisions a lot, right? So was your gut right? When looking back, you can make a great picture of how your gut was right, but at the moment, I think it's better to write it down and then look back like after a couple of months and see how it worked out. Because the thing, what I'm pretty confident about is that a decision is a decision, right? If it turns out right or better than you expected or worse than expected, has not a lot to do with the actual decision, but has a lot to do with the environment or what's going on with the timing or a lot of stuff that's coming in, luck, right? It has nothing to do with the actual decision, or not a lot. So I think improving the process of the decision is actually a lot more important than looking back at your decisions and how it turned out. How do you feel about this, and what did you see about this in your research?
I agree 100% with what you're saying, and that's one of the conclusions also, that in order to improve decision making, which was really my interest in doing the research, is how can we improve decision making, not just understand it. I wanted to see, can we practically make better decisions? And that's a question up for debate in the academic world. But anyway, I did exactly what you're saying, is that there is a lot of storytelling when you ask entrepreneurs how they made decisions. So I tried to avoid that by pointing them to direct decisions and trying to take, I asked them, for example, can you name one very difficult decision or several? What was the situation? I tried to take them back to that specific situation and ask them what was happening around you, who did you get the information from. But still, it's difficult to really explore your own decision making going backwards, because there are so many things affecting it. So I agree with what you're saying, that having a way to record or put down at the time of your decision making what was actually influencing me. How did I feel in my gut? What was the information? Did I have it? What were my fears? That's probably the most reliable way of becoming a better decision maker, because then you can see that your personality influences maybe the way your position in a team or your relationship to the others affected, what happened right before you came in, so you can see these biases more clearly, and you can start analyzing those instead of analyzing the outcome, which, as you say, I also think is the wrong way to go about, because we don't know. Maybe we just was lucky or unlucky. So it's more analyzing, is there a pattern in the way I make decisions that turn out to be fulfilling or right in some other aspect than just looking at the outcome.
Right. Good. Yeah, I learned, I think, a number of things. Like I said, Peter had a great formula that I started using to write it down in a book, but also Jim Collins, I listened to a podcast interview with him, and he talked about this idea of entrepreneurs making decisions and then basing the next decision on the outcome of the original decision, and either failing or just having more success, but not realizing that it's all part of, lots of it's part of the luck that happened. The timing was just right. And the thing is that the entrepreneur just, or CEO just builds a story for himself or herself saying, I'm very good at making decisions. I'm very good at this type of decision, and continues to go that way. And then, but not really improving the decisions, right? Based on the outcome. And the other one is about is Kahneman, Daniel Kahneman, with his research, for example, on how remembers things, right? He talks about this movie that we have on one part of the brain, and the other part just remembering the highlights, right? So just a couple of highlights in the beginning of the ending is really important to remember a good film. So if you have a good holiday, I think it's really important to make sure that the beginning is excellent and the ending is excellent. That already makes like 80% of your memory of this holiday. And it's not difficult to do, right? If you book a really great restaurant or a good hotel, which has a good service, and maybe you pay a little bit more, but you don't remember that afterwards. Just remember the really, really good location and service you got there. Then 80% of your holiday was just really great. So I think it's not really difficult to stage. And I think it's similar to entrepreneurs, right? If you can stage how you remember things. In a good way. So
exactly.
What is another important thing that you saw from your conclusion from your research?
Well, one thing that has also been shown in other research on entrepreneurship is that experienced entrepreneurs, expert entrepreneurs, have a larger toolbox of how to make decisions and knows when to use what. So, for example, you mentioned gut feeling. Some entrepreneurs use gut feeling for making decisions, but at the same time, these entrepreneurs that I interviewed also were very analytical in other decisions. So it's not just like I always go with my gut or I always have a rigorous analysis. No, it's knowing when to do what, and that comes with experience. That this decision requires very, very much analysis, going very deep and not being influenced by past experiences of similar in a biased way, and just being very but other decisions where they can take it very fast and know that this is experience based. It's not, if I'm not 100% right, it doesn't matter because I can change the decisions. And so that's a kind of a confidence in your decision making that makes the expert entrepreneur a better decision maker, I would say. Kahneman would probably say that gut feeling in entrepreneurship is highly unreliable. because developing a gut feeling requires that you have had an area where you can make the same type of decision and get feedback on if the decision was bad or not. And in entrepreneurship, it's very seldom the same type of decision. Not even recruiting, you might think that you're able to determine who will be a good fit for the company, but most often, I would say almost always, you're just deluding yourself, because you cannot do that. And so, but it could be other things of just knowing that it's more important that we make a decision than it's being exactly right, because entrepreneurship is also about learning as much as doing the right thing. It's who learns the quickest, and you learn by making a lot of decisions and then adjusting to what is right, or what the environment reacts to in a positive way.
Yeah.
So that was another one, that the emphasis on decision speed and also the openness to changing course, changing the tactics, even if you keep the same long-term vision or purpose, or
right,
change the tactics going there.
What I learned from Ariely, that's his name, right? What's his name? Is it Ariely?
Dan Ariely.
Dan Ariely is about making decisions, making more decisions, right? So speed helps you to make more decisions, right? So he did a couple of researches about when you give students, that has two groups of students who have to make like a painting or something creative, right? So and entrepreneurship is a really creative job, in my opinion. So I think it's very comparable. So if you have a group and tell them, okay, you have to create one thing and one thing only, and you will be graded on that one thing at the end of the term. Or you put the group and say you have to make as many things, and we will value the number of things that you create. Is that the group that made more things, so make more decisions, have a better product in the end? Because they've just made more decisions, they've just made more products, and they've learned along the way. So it improved not only the process, but also improved the end product, the result. While if you focus on making the best one, you lose out on the experience, and you just have this one experience trying to make the best thing from this one experience. And I also am very hesitant of gut feelings, because I think it has a lot to do with this, right? If you make a lot of decisions, your gut feeling will be improving, because even if the decisions are not the same, they're similar. But if you look at, for example, hiring people as an entrepreneur, you don't do a lot of hiring actually, right? You just do a couple in the end. So your gut feeling on decision making for the right person is not very good. You need to do like 1,000 before you have develop a good gut feeling that the decision you made at that moment turned out to be a great employee in the end, who has great ideas and helps your company forward. So for me, that sounds all very logical and so true, and also kind of weird. But obviously, I have been doing a lot of reading and learning about this too, and talking to people like you, Pelle. Is that why don't we do more of this? Why don't we make more decisions? Why don't we do more? Well, entrepreneurs do in general, obviously.
Yeah, I think it has to do with that. It hurts to be wrong. And some cultures, company cultures or family cultures or societies punish it harder, and then it's really, is it worth the risk of getting hit here? What's the upside? And I think some entrepreneurs they become entrepreneurs because they don't want that external judgment of a corporation, that here comes the boss, that you don't feel that they understand it as well as you do, and they say this was wrong, and that's detrimental to your creative spirit. And that's one of the reasons I think why entrepreneurs want to do it themselves, and you don't get that external reaction. You take it, you can more freely learn by doing. So I think, but still, it's I think that's the pain of being wrong is one of the reasons why we don't experiment a lot, and because you still bet on at the time you make the decision, you believe that this is the best way to do it, and then no, it wasn't. And it depends on who you are and the context, if that's comfortable or very uncomfortable to be wrong. So it's I think that's the difficult part to me.
I have a culture question then for this one. So is it in Sweden, is it a big failure when your company goes bankrupt as an entrepreneur? Or is it an experience and you can move on?
I think it's considered as a quite a big failure. It depends on the way also, the way it failed. But I mean, if you take a high risk on something and was maybe a little too early, then people would probably say that this was not a huge mistake. It was still a visionary. And but if you make a company go bankrupt by just making bad decisions or not being diligent, then I think it's stigmatized as not something good. I think, I can't really say that I know a lot of people that with pride say that I have had these bankruptcies. If they can say that, if after that they had some really great successes, then it's quite easy to say, I learned a lot, and you should all be taking risks. But being there, having had the bankruptcy and then proudly saying it, I think it's not such an open attitude towards that and just cheering it on. I think we are quite hard on.
It sounds very similar to the Netherlands, right? So here also, if you have like a bankruptcy on your name, you're a failure. Just that's the way it is, and you don't want to fail. So the bankruptcy is something that you want to avoid heavily. So I can imagine that decisions are influenced by the fear of failure. And if you look at entrepreneurs in the US, it's sometimes you hear the one-liner saying if you didn't go bankrupt, you're not really an entrepreneur, right? So it's a completely different situation. Right. So risk taking is considered is done differently in that culture over there. I'm not saying it's better, but it's different. And what do you think? What do you think you could do to at least decrease that risky feeling for important decisions as an entrepreneur?
I think it helps if you're a team and that you provide the support to take risky decisions as a team more, but also that you feel that decisions are challenged before making them. And in that case, you know the risks, but you kind of in it together. And sometimes it will be following one person's wish and another time another person's wish. And you know that this is part of the learning, and we're not taking so big decisions that we're putting everything at stake. We're trying to avoid that. I think a team helps a lot by not taking it personally and feeling that I am a failure or I did this. I mean, in yourself, I think it's difficult to change your own attitude towards risk. I think you have it in you a lot, and that's something you have to live with. So I think the context, the team helps a lot, and again, talking about it in the management team or in the company, have a discussion on it, not just taking it as a given that you're not allowed to take risk. That could become like a rule for all decisions. Where do you draw the line? Is this a big decisions where we cannot go wrong, or is it a very small decision that it really doesn't matter? It's more important with the speed of making the decision. I think you need to take that meta discussion on decision making and be open to not knowing, but it's quite rare that we do that. It's kind of decision making becomes part of who we are, and difficult to have the language to talk about it, but I think it's very important in order to see biases, to see where risk plays a role and why does it, and when we exaggerate risk or when we become too overconfident. It's not easy for anyone to do it right, and then we need to bring more awareness to it, and there's so much to learn about risk making. That's why there is so much research in all fields of how can we make better decisions.
Yeah. I've been reading also your article, The 5 Principles for Making Decisions.
Yeah.
That was based on the research by Saraswati. I'm reading here.
Right. Okay.
I like the 5 principles because they're very clear. The bird in hand principle, the affordable loss principle, the crazy guilt principle, the lemonade principle, and the pilot in the plane principle. And the one you just described, right, is the affordable loss principle, right? So if you make sure that the decision you're making has a loss that we can afford as a company as a whole, I think it makes it a lot easier. And that's I think that exactly describes what you were just saying there.
Right, and also that applies to psychological risks that it's easy to exaggerate the psychological risk of failure, so to speak. Taking the initiative to talk to that big partner that you think would be very valuable, making the phone call, making the introduction. We think, oh, what if he or she says no? That's going to hurt. Then, and maybe we avoid some of those discussions. But what are we actually risking? The affordable loss is it's a psychological price, but we could have 10 no's, 50 no's, 100 no's before we get to the right partner. And now I'm talking about a business partner, but it could apply to a personal partner also, of course. But so that's also the exaggeration of loss that is not financial, that you think that it's going to hurt so much, or that's also affordable loss.
Yeah.
Seeing what am I really risking? I'm risking that one person turned this down, and maybe they did it because of their own personal reasons, had nothing to do with me. And there it pays off to take a lot of initiatives that really has low downside to find that ideal business partner or client that matches what you're doing, instead of after the first 5 no saying that we don't have, what I'm presenting is not good.
Mm-hmm. Can you, I think it's interesting, so can you explain a little bit about the pilot in the plane principle?
Pilot, it was a long time since I wrote this paper, but pilot in the plane principle, I think it has to do with that you are you're making decisions where you're invested in the outcome of the decision. I think it's that it's the pilot is if the plane crashes, the pilot will die also. So he will or she will make certain that all the right security decisions are made, so you can feel safe with the pilot having a lot of skin in the game. So to use Nassim Taleb's vocabulary, that an entrepreneur that makes decision with a lot of skin in the game, that they are affected like a pilot in the plane, will make at least more careful or more well thought out, more in alignment with what you can expect to be the best decision possible. If you have a person that's making decision that's not a pilot in the plane, making all the security decisions before takeoff, you can feel slightly more worried, because that person goes home and the plane takes off. So as I recall it, it's that is the pilot in the plane, to make sure that the persons taking the decisions also have skin in the game, that they are affected by the outcome, and that's something that makes sure that they make the most rigorous decision process and it's in their interest to make the best possible decision.
Mm-hmm. So I have 2 questions to conclude. They are very aligned, so that's easy. What is the worst decision that you've made in your entrepreneurial career, and what's the best one?
Wow. To come back to what we have been discussing it, what is a good decision? So the worst decision then would probably be the one where I definitely had a bad process, but I also associated to a bad outcome, but because that's easiest to see, that was a bad decision, but in this case it corresponds to a bad decision process. So I would say it was a recruitment decision. So I will not say to exactly which decision it was, what person, but it was a very important recruitment where I actually followed my gut feeling. I didn't know where I was too fast. I wanted to hire this person because it would solve a lot of other problems if we had someone in place, and my gut feeling actually said that this does not feel like the ideal fit. But I overruled that and said, my mind told me to make the decision now so that we get this position filled. It's so that was a bad process, or actually I didn't have a process. I just wanted it done, and then I didn't take in this case, what was my gut saying? It was probably saying something about this: you are overlooking something. Something is that I should have dug deeper into, not necessarily gone with a gut feeling, but it was at least an indication of something is not 100% in this decision. So that was, if it's the actual worst decision, I don't know, but it's a clear decision where I've regretted it.
Yeah, that's good. That's good enough. So, and now to celebrate your decision, yeah.
I would say it was the decision to start my first, to getting into the entrepreneurial journey when I was 30 years old, starting my first own business together with a friend, what we call the plunge decision in academia, taking the decision to start. Because and was that a good decision process? I think it was clearly aligned with a purpose, at least, of wanting to do something meaningful with business knowledge and following a strong energy of here is something valuable to be made, and the excitement of that. So I think it was. We actually did a lot of analysis also. So I think it was a good combination of lots of analysis of, is this really a fruitful financial decision, and a lot of heart and belly of this is something we really want, and we feel the action in the belly to take action to. So I think it was integrated with the mind and the heart and the belly in so that made it a good decision that
right,
that led to a lot of other good stuff.
Do you see yourself continuing on the research for decision making?
Yes, not academically. I have too little patience for that. But I definitely continue my research on decision making. I think I read as much as I can about decision making, read the books, I apply it in the educational, the academy for management teams that I run and in the companies I work with. So I would say it's a continuous research project, but I don't do it to write papers. There might be a book, actually, I have in the back of my mind of looking at decision making more together with system thinking and how you make virtuous circles occur, but I haven't decided yet. But that's gathering material for that. So that might be a follow-up on the earlier book.
Interesting. Okay. Yes, I was thinking I had a question to conclude this and give the people that are listening something for the journey on making better decisions. What is the most important book that an entrepreneur can read about decision making to improve their decision making?
Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow is probably the best to get the general understanding of the difficulty of decision making, system 1 and system 2. But I would say learning more about your own, who you are, your own patterns, and that's difficult to do in a book. But it's because you are working with your own internal drivers, fears, motivations in decisions, and that's what I think has the biggest influence. Can you become aware of your own decision making and what drives them? But it's difficult to point to one book there. I think I have had a lot of value in studying something called the Enneagram, with different internal strategies for how to handle different situations. But that's a map to understand how you act and behave in the world. And that's, of course, is how you make decisions also. So there is a book called The Wisdom of the Enneagram, for example, to understand these different strategies, internal strategies that we all carry around to make sense of the world and make decisions in the world. I think that's a good starting point, but then you have to apply it to your own life. It's not the truth, but it's a map to make it easier to understand yourself. And I think that's the key to making decisions that make you more fulfilled. And I believe that's successful decision making, where you're in alignment with who you are and what is true inside of you, below the personality structure.
Pelle, first of all, it was an interesting conversation. I love the ending, which I've never thought about, studying Enneagram to becoming better decision making. So that's a really good addition for myself personally. And for me, it's a topic I think I will not stop learning and reading and doing about. So I enjoyed learning from you, reading your paper and listening to you and talking to you about decision making. It was a great opportunity. Thank you, Pelle.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure. It was great fun. Thank you.